Hebrew History and Prophetic Books. 5. The reign of Hezekiah over Judah. A.M. 3283 to 3312. 750 to 721 BCE. After the destruction of the kingdom of Israel, there were indications for a time of returning prosperity, moral as well as political, in the kingdom of Judah. Hezekiah's reign, which began 6 years before the event referred to, was characterized by integrity and uprightness on the part of both the king and the court, and many reforms were introduced or attempted. Still, the growing power of the Assyrian Empire was pushing back its encroachments and pressing severely upon the nation, and at one time seemed about to destroy Judah as it had Israel. It would have done so but for the divine interposition. Okay, so how's that defined? Well, God God has the final say. So people say that about a lot of things. As it was, the power of Judah was greatly diminished. Remember, there's no J. Near the close of this reign, Babylon, for the first time, comes into noticeable relations to the Jews by an embassy from that now rapidly developing power. To this embassy, Hezekiah, flattered by the attention shown him, exhibited the resources of his kingdom and the still remarkable treasures of the temple, for which indiscretion he was rebuked by the prophet. During this reign flourished the prophet Isaiah, a man of extraordinary intellectual and spiritual power, and perhaps the most eloquent of the Old Testament prophets, or at least the people who preserved, who passed on the account. In these days also, Hosea, Nahum, and Micah preached and prophesied against the prevailing evils. At this time, Numa Pompilius was king of Rome. Babylon, just coming into historical note, was the viceroy of the Assyria, of which Nineveh was the capital. Media had revolted from Assyria and become independent, and Athens was under the rule of the archons, principalities. But an interesting thing you have is that twice the Israelites kind of returned. They rose to power historically, sort of around the King David time. I mean, they made an appearance in the 2 centuries before that, but they really rose to power at that time, and then they rose to power after. Well, I mean, there was recoveries, but after the all this, so they did this twice, and then the Jews, after the start of Judaism, you had the Jews ruled by, they rose to power under the Maccabees, and they rose to power under the Bar Kokhba revolt, which the messianic problem of, I'll put it all on the leader, and the people stepped back too much, and Islamic world has repeated largely the thing is time and time again. Maybe the Taliban could have done a better job if the people stayed as involved in the kicking out of the communist oppression as they were, beforehand. But the Zionists have risen to power once. Who's to say they're not going to fall in that area and rise to power again? But ascension of Hezekiah and his character, 2 Chronicles 29, 1 and 2, reforms introduced, repairs of the temple. The Levites exhorted purification of neglected rooms, courts, and implements, renewal of religious service, and appointments of proper officers, ministers, and musicians for this purpose. Verse 3 through 36, great preparation for renewed observance of the Passover. Oh, another way to translate it is hop. Like hopping from one place to another like a rabbit. Invitations sent throughout the territory of the brethren of the kingdom of Israel. How the invitation was treated by some and heard by others. 30, verse 1 through 12, the memorable feast, revival influence resulting in destruction of idolatrous altars, and in the hearty devotion of the people, verses 13 through 27, further combined efforts to banish idolatry, regulation of the religious service, and its thorough reestablishment, Hezekiah's devotion and energy, 31, 1 through 21. What relic of former times and temptation to idolatry was destroyed early in this reign, 2 Kings 18:4, gives some account of this object, Numbers 21, 5 through 9, a new enterprise infused among the people, prosperity and victory over some of their enemies, 2 Kings 18, 7 and 8, invasion by the Assyrians. Hezekiah submits to their exactions and pays large tribute using silver and gold, both of the treasury of the temple and its ornaments, to meet the demand, verse 13 through 16. Second invasion by the Assyrians, Hezekiah's preparations for defense, both within and without the city. He also reorganizes his military forces, 2 Chronicles 32, 1 through 3. Siege of Jerusalem, insulting demand of the officers constituting the Assyrian embassy and their boastful threats, 2 Kings 18, 17 through 37, 2 Chronicles 32, 9 through 19, distress of Hezekiah, message to Isaiah, the encouraging and assuring answer, 2 Kings 19, 1 through 7, departure of the Assyrians for a season with threats of future vengeance. They return and renew the siege, Isaiah's prophecy against them, 8 through 34, 2 Chronicles 32. Their miraculous defeat and overthrow, 2 Kings 19. Hezekiah's apparently fatal sickness. He is greatly afflicted and prays earnestly. The answer through the prophet, the sign of the shadow on the dial. 2 Kings 20, 1 through 11. Isaiah 38, 1 through 8. Hezekiah's song of thanksgiving, 9 through 20. His subsequent prosperity and temporary worldliness. His penitence and piety, 2 Chronicles 32, 25 through 29, embassy from the king of Babylon with presents, Hezekiah's exhibition of his treasures, Isaiah's rebuke, 2 Kings 20, 12 through 18, Isaiah 39, Hezekiah's death, 2 Kings 20, 21, name of the prophets of this reign. Contemporary history is seen in the introduction to this. So what is the note there?